Okay, so for years, the city of Asheville, North Carolina was buzzing, right? Everyone was so excited about getting their first Costco. And then, poof, after all the meetings, all the planning, the deal just vanished. So what in the world happened here? How did this fall apart? Let's dig in.
I mean, this news hit like a ton of bricks. City leaders, residents, they were all completely stunned. You had one council member straight up calling the decision devastating. Another one just posted online. Ugh, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
So you have to ask, right? How does a multi-billion-dollar company just up and leave a city that was basically begging for it to arrive? This was way more than just some simple business decision. The story of why Costco packed its bags is this fascinating local mystery. It's like a puzzle, full of competing interests, super complex regulations, and at its core, a city kind of wrestling with what it wants to be.
And right away, two totally different stories started popping up. You had the official reason from Costco, the standard corporate speak, increased scope, timeline, and anticipated costs. Super vague. But then you had the public theories, what people were actually talking about. Locals were speculating that the road stuff was just the tip of the iceberg. And maybe, just maybe, some local competitors were quietly making things a little difficult.
All right, to really get what happened here, we got to start with one single massive number, 16,000 plus 16,000. That's how many extra cars the North Carolina Department of Transportation, the NCDOT, projected would be flooding an already jam-packed highway. And that's not per week, that's every single day. This one number, this traffic projection, it became the heart of the entire conflict.
And look, the scale of this problem was just huge. I mean, we're talking about a highway that was already seeing 29,000 cars a day. You throw a Costco into that mix and bam, the projection shot up to 45,000. It was like a traffic tsunami was about to hit. The infrastructure just couldn't handle it. So that led to the multi-million-dollar question. Who's going to pay to fix all this?
But here's the thing. Was Costco really being asked to pay for problems that hadn't even happened yet? The traffic numbers, as crazy as they were really just the beginning of the story. If you dig into the technical documents of this project, you find this really fascinating twist. And it's our first major clue as to why this whole deal collapsed.
Yeah, the clue has a name, and it sounds kind of spooky. It's called ghost traffic. And believe me, it's a very real and very, very expensive term in city planning. What it means is that developers, like Costco, sometimes have to pay to fix the traffic impact from buildings that don't even exist yet, buildings that haven't been designed, let alone built.
So let me break down how this ghost traffic haunted the deal. Step 1, Costco plans its store. That's phase 1, simple enough. But then, step 2, the city says, hold on, your traffic models have to include a future hypothetical phase 2. And what was in this hypothetical phase? A medical office and a restaurant. We're talking high-traffic businesses here. So step 3, the traffic estimates for this non-existent phase 2 absolutely skyrocket the total impact. And boom, step 4, suddenly Costco is on the hook to pay for these massive road construction projects now to solve traffic problems from a phase 2 that might never ever get built. It's kind of wild, right?
Now, the whole ghost traffic thing was a huge piece of the puzzle, for sure. But it wasn't the only problem. There was a second clue, this phenomenon that you could call compliance creep. Think of it like a death by 1,000 cuts for the project's budget.
Okay, check this out. It's like a tale of two plans for the very same piece of land. Just a few years back, in 2022, a warehouse project was approved for this exact site. And for traffic, the ruling was no improvements necessary. Standard parts, private cul-de-sac, pretty straightforward. Fast forward to the Costco proposal. Now, we're talking major road reconstruction, dual turn lanes, building private roads up to full city public road standards, upsizing stormwater pipes, expanding greenway paths. You get the idea. In just a few years, the regulatory burden had absolutely exploded.
And let's get into the nitty-gritty of this cascade of upgrades. You had private roads needing to meet these super expensive public road standards, stormwater pipes had to be upsized from 15 to 18 inches, right-of-way demands jumped from 60 to 71 feet, the greenway path got wider, a utility strip got added, and each little thing squeezed the usable space on the site. Any one of these on its own, maybe not a deal breaker, but you add them all up and suddenly you've got this cascade of costs and complications. The budget just starts to balloon.
So all this brings us to a much bigger question, doesn't it? Is this Costco story just an isolated incident, a one-off thing? Or is it actually a symptom of a bigger problem with how Asheville approaches growth and development? Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here.
Okay, so some observers argue that the city suffers from what they call process fatigue. The idea is that Asheville has this reputation for having just endless layers of review boards and commissions. It's like a maze. And look, community input is obviously super important, but when you have that many layers, it can create this real sense of unpredictability for developers. Timelines get stretched out, and costs become this moving target that's impossible to pin down.
Then there's another point people bring up, and this one's a little more pointed. It's the idea of political theater. This is where city leaders might publicly roll out the red carpet, welcome a project for the cameras, while behind the scenes, the bureaucracy is just piling on one hurdle after another. And for a company like Costco, which runs on spreadsheets and risk analysis, that kind of disconnect between what's being said and what's actually happening, that's a huge red flag.
And really, when you put it all together, many people see a fundamental identity crisis. Is Asheville this cool boutique town that's all about local character and small businesses? Or is it a booming regional economic hub that needs to make room for big players like Costco? The thing is, the city seems to be trying to be both at the same time. And this whole Costco deal, it really just ripped the Band-Aid off the friction that exists between those two very different visions for the future.
One local blog, To Asheville and Beyond, put it really bluntly. They said, "You can't be anti-growth and pro-prosperity at the same time." And wow, that quote really just cuts right to the heart of this whole debate, doesn't it? It suggests that at some point, a city has to make a choice. And if you try to have it both ways, you might just end up with missed opportunities.
And the fallout from this was immediate. I mean, literally, the moment the Asheville deal fell apart, the mayor of the neighboring town of Canton was on Facebook, publicly recruiting Costco, saying, "Hey, come over here." It's just such a stark reminder that economic opportunity, it doesn't just disappear into thin air, it just moves. It finds the path of least resistance and goes somewhere else.
So in the end, the whole saga of Costco and Asheville really boils down to this one really tough question. When does a city's meticulous, careful planning cross a line and become a barrier to its own growth? When does protecting a community turn into pushing away the very prosperity that community says it wants? This isn't just a story about one big box store. It's a perfect case study of this delicate, incredibly difficult balance that cities all over the country are struggling to find.